Good morning. Today we're going to try to make 2 copies of this ugly bookcase, only we're going to try to not make it ugly. If you want to see that, stay tuned because that's what we're going to do today. Good morning. Welcome to Memphis Monday 384, our 20th week of our 8th year. The story is, I have a friend who is a first grade teacher, and she has an old bookcase that she tried to restore but gave up on. She likes the bookcase, but the finish is truly ugly. And what she asked me to do is reproduce the bookcase, make 2 of them, and make the original bookcase a throwaway item. So I rogered up to it. What I may do down the line is go ahead and restore the old one, just because I like to restore stuff. But we haven't done a bookcase in a while, and I mean it's been years. So let's get excited and get to work. It's a bookcase that we're going to try to duplicate. There's where they tried to strip some of the paint off. I just don't think they used the right stripper. What we're going to do is we're going to take the dimensions of this thing and reproduce it. Here's a little drawing I put together of our project. I must have switched to white paper because I can hardly see this. Anyway, the point I wanted to make was that this thing was built by somebody who knew kind of what they were doing. Maybe it was built in a factory or something, because I can tell by the dimensions. If you cut this thing out of anything, plywood or anything else, the dimensions, I like the dimensions for the top are 48 inches, which means you can get 2 of those out of an 8-foot board. The sides are 29 inches, means you can get 3 of them out of a 8-foot board. And then cleverly, if that's a word, is cleverly a word? The thickness here, the depth of the shelves are 12 inches. That means in a sheet of plywood you can cut 4 pieces 12 inches wide. And the other standard dimension would be 24 or 16. So anyway, this is what I'm always talking about. When you're making your projects, think about the sizing of the pieces. And with plywood $100 a sheet, probably ought to think about on your cut list how you're going to cut the different parts out of the piece of plywood. Here's a little drawing of a sheet of plywood, and I've got, here's the tops, the mid shelf, the bottom, sides. So everything is, so I can have an actual plan. From this drawing I was able to tell that I wasn't going to get all the parts out of one sheet of plywood. I needed one more strip. Now, I've talked about it before, but when you build projects like this, even simple ones, I like to go through on a piece of paper and actually build each individual part in my head and sketch out on you can see there's nothing fancy about this drawing, and actually put in where all the dados, all the rabbets, the exact dimensions, and and think about one part at a time. Don't think about the whole project, just think about the one part at a time. Now on our project, They just use butt joints here. There's butt joints all the way around, and I think they just tacked everything together with drywall screws. I'm not exactly sure. Let me check that. Well, it looks like they used a galvanized screw to hold this bottom leg on, but they used dowels on the top. You can see here, right there, that's either a dowel or a plug. It could be that there's a screw underneath the plug. We don't know until we drill it out. And how they have the shelves in there is a mystery. I can't find any fasteners on the outside or the inside. Maybe they just glued it and put some brads or pins in it. Can't find anything here either. Now you can see what I've done is I've cut out all the stock for our two shelves. Those are the center braces. That's the top. That's the mid shelf and the bottom shelf. And those are the sides. Now, getting back to my theme of doing one thing at a time, go through these parts one at a time and put the correct dados and rabbets on it. First part is the top. Okay, here's the two tops, and they're all cut to size. What we need to do is put a rabbet along one edge, but we only do that after we do the dados. Okay, we're going to be in a dado. We're going to be in a dado and rabbet frenzy now for quite a while. I think the most complicated is probably the sides. It's going to have 2 dados and 3 rabbets. Strategically placing these, all the rabbets, all the dados will be 3/4 of an inch wide and 3/8 of an inch deep. Well, I've been setting up my stacked dado head cutter, and this one right here is what you want to do is you want to go halfway through the wood, so that's 3/8 of an inch, and you want it to fit just about like that, not too tight, not too loose. I won't show you all these dados, but this is the side piece. It's got the most. It's got rabbets on the top, the back, and then it's got 2 dados, through dados, through the middle, and there at the bottom. Let's do this one first. Now on our prototype, this is the dado we're cutting right here. Now this is 3/4 inch stock, so we're going to go in 3/8 of an inch. And the distance here is 13 3/4 to the center line, which means that I have to be particularly careful about measuring this to the exact center of my stacked dado head cutter. And I'm going to just run it through flat on the table saw. So I have this one at 13 3/4, and then I have this one at center line 2 inches from the bottom for the bottom shelf. So let's do all these first. Okay, I got that center cut out. Now what I need to do is put the one, this is the one that is 13 3/4 at the center line. So this would be the top, and I need to put this one 2 inches to the center line out on this edge here. So let's do that. Now what I'm putting in is the dado that goes in this top shelf and the dado that goes in the bottom shelf. Now, plywood comes almost always with an A and B side, so I want to make sure I put the dado on the B side for the top shelf and the A side for the bottom shelf. And the distance here for the dado is exactly in the center, which happens to be 23 5/8. Now this is kind of a dodgy way to do it. I should use my sled, but my sled is not all that accurate anymore after 20 years. So I'm going to slide it through this way. And it's 23 5/8 to the center of my stacked dado head cutter. This is my top shelf, and I'm putting the dado on the B side. Now, each one of the sides will receive a 3/4 inch rabbet, which would be identical to the dado, except it'll be right on the end. And the top then will sit in that rabbet. Let me show you how that looks. This is the test piece. That's what that rabbet's going to look like. And then my top will fit in there just like that. And it'll be flush at the top. Let's look at the set. Here's what the setup looks like. I didn't change the depth of the dado blade. And I added the sacrificial fence and brought the fence in just where it's touching the edge of the 3/4 inch setup. And I want my dado or my rabbet right along here. So all I can do is run it through. Let's give it a try. Okay, what I need to do now is put a 1/4 inch rabbet right along the back edge of the sides and the tops. I don't have to put it on the 2 shelves because they are already cut 1/4 inch narrower than the sides and the top. I hope that's a true statement. It is. Okay. Also, the center brace doesn't need one either because it's cut to fit between the back and the front trim. Okay, let's look at that setup. Okay, similar to the other setup, you got your sacrificial fence. You adjust it so that the depth between the outer edge of the stacked dado head cutter and the side of the fence is 1/4 inch, and keep the depth the same. I think everybody does this. You need to do a test cut. You need to do a test cut to make sure that you haven't made some kind of a stupid error. So let's go ahead and give it a try. Okay, now this is one of the tops, and I want my rabbet. This is the only machining that we're doing on the top. I want to make sure that that rabbet is on the B side. Well, there we have it, 2 copies of the original. I just mocked them up to make sure that all the dados and rabbets are right. Okay, I guess we can staple them together, glue them up, and start worrying about putting the backs on them. Putting the thing together is pretty simple because we got all these dados. So it's just a matter of putting a little glue in the joint, and then putting these small staples, not staples, brads, into the joint. You've seen this done before at an angle, so it goes through the joint and locks it in place. On our prototype, it has this 2.5 inch piece of trim that also serves as a foot, and it's got a little lip right here. So we're going to duplicate all that. So you saw me cutting this trim. I'll ease the edges after I get it all in, but we're going to duplicate that bottom trim. And then we're going to add trim to all the other surfaces to bring the whole thing out to this depth right here. This is birch plywood, and I'm going to trim it in, this is hard maple. I'm holding this trim on with brads and glue. Well, I was going to put some wood filler in the joints. My wood filler has died. Well, I'm in the wood filler dilemma again. This one's totally shot. This one's totally shot. This one wasn't real bad. I added a little water to it. So I'm going to go ahead and try to use this one. I added water to it and softened it up a little bit. I hope it'll work. I made a big deal about this some time ago, but I think I'm going to start buying this wood filler in these smaller containers because, you know, I use quite a bit of wood filler, but, you know, it still goes like this one's almost finished, but you know, you waste half of it. This is some high dollar wood filler, and I only used about a quarter of it. So I think I'm going to start buying these smaller containers. We're about ready to wrap this job up. Everything's coming out just as expected. What I'm doing now is rounding over the trim we just put on. Let me show you how I do that. Now, whenever I'm working on these cabinets, it's kind of nice to have them up where you can look at them that way, but they're a lot easier to work on if they're laying on their back. So what I like to do is lay the cabinet on its back. That gives me better access to the trim. Now I'm gonna round over the edges of the trim with a router, but I can't do that as long as I got this wood filler on all the brad holes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run a sander across these flat surfaces here and try not to round them over and just make it flat so my router will be flat when I go across the trim. This is a little encouraging note if you're kind of new to woodworking and home repairs and stuff. All these tools require practice. You know, one of the two most common tools are a handheld router and skill saw. Well, I've been doing this stuff for a long time, and I don't hardly ever use this, and I hardly ever use a skill saw. So I'm not very good at it. So the takeaway is that, you know, it seems like, well, this is real simple, just run along the edge and simple as that. Well, it takes practice. The use of all this stuff takes practice. So just keep that in mind. And there's a specific tip goes along with a router, handheld router, and a table router even more so. And that is there's a right way, there's a right direction and a wrong direction. You want to be cutting into the direction of the cut, and you'll know the difference. You know, if the router wants to take off and you know, run away with you, you know that's the wrong direction. It's even more so on the bench router. Well, I'll do a little sanding and we'll be able to put some finish on these things. I'll finish putting on the stain, and then we'll take a look at them. I'm not going to take you through the polyurethane. That's going to take several days. I basically put on some penetrating golden pecan color on here. Let it set for a while and wipe it off. Well, here's what we started with. Memphis Money 384 I mean. We wanted to make a copy of this, only not make it ugly. And we made 2 copies. Made it out of birch plywood with hard maple trim. We upgraded the joinery with dados and rabbets, and we stained the whole thing with a color called golden pecan. Still got a couple more days of polyurethane, but overall I'm pretty satisfied. Well, that does it for Memphis Monday 384. Today we took our prototype, which was an ugly little bookshelf, and we upgraded the joinery a little bit. We went from pre-glued up panels to plywood. We used birch plywood. We upgraded the joinery a little bit. We concentrated on the design and the joint, making the dados and rabbets and this and that. Kind of skipped over some of the assembly, but I think we got a pretty good overview of the process of making a little cabinet like that. Can't think of anything else. Like, share, favorite, all stuff to do on the internet. Most important, make sure you're back here next week for an exciting Memphis Monday. Thanks for playing along.